हेलो व्यूअर्स, एनआरआई लाइव सीरीज में आपका स्वागत है। आज मैं आपसे एक बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग बात करूंगा। काफी लोग मुझसे क्वेश्चन पूछते हैं कि रेस्टोरेंट बिजनेस के बारे में मैं क्या सोचता हूँ। सो अगेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट एनआरआईज हु आर सेटल्ड इन ईदर इन अमेरिका, ऑस्ट्रेलिया और कनाडा और यूरोप और यूके। आई एम नॉट रियली टॉकिंग अबाउट एनआरआईज who are settled in Middle East or who are in India. Definitely, people who are in India are exempted because they're not even NRIs. So this is so. The question is, what do I think about the restaurant business? So the question is, what do I think about the restaurant business? So let me tell you the few things about the restaurant business. The very first thing about the restaurant business in America, the restaurant business is a labor class business. You should know that. It's basically a blue collar business, uh, and this is the first thing you should know. So if you have, and it's a labor intensive business. So if you have like the labor background, like let's say from farming background where you're doing a lot of work every single day, and so you have this habit of doing hard work, then you can do this business. Similarly, if you have background of, let's say, driving a taxi in India, then you probably can do something like this. Similarly, if you have, let's say, a background of riding a rickshaw, driving a rickshaw, I don't know what's the right word, but basically, then you can do this business. This is not for the person, this is really not for IT engineers. Now there are a lot of exceptions you guys will notice, and I'll talk more about those. Like for example, you may notice some people who had IT background and they left that, and then they went into restaurant business. It really is a choice. Again, I'm not saying don't do it. See, I told you it requires a lot of hard work. Sometimes you have to wait on the tables. It is quite less dignified in that way. This is the second point about it. This is quite less dignified because you have to work as a waiter many a time. You may have to work in the catering. You may have to cater to someone's home. You may have to send the food to someone because you are pretty much the backup of everybody, right? So and sometimes and so these are some of the things, right? So this is the number one thing, that it is a labor kind of labor intensive work. Second one, it has little less dignity to it. So this is the second problem with it. And third one is a very interesting aspect of restaurant business in this country is you may have to deal with illegality. I have seen many, like you can practically assume every Indian restaurant has illegal people in it, working in it. And I personally don't like this business because of just this one reason. Because I don't like the business, where I have to deal with illegal aliens. So I would love to. I would not work in such a business because you're in constant threat, even of getting raided one day and then getting caught, and then this is just a constant threat. I don't like it. I don't like doing illegal stuff, and this is not such a great position to be. And I don't think there's really much to talk about here, other than the fact that basically it requires hiring illegals, and that's a very common practice among all Indian restaurant owners. Think about this. So typically, think about this. Typically, any cook would make about $4,000-5,000 a month, and you need only $30,000-40,000 to start a restaurant. So with the year salary, he could easily start a restaurant. Why don't they do that? With the year saving, they could easily do that. They don't do it because they probably could be illegal, and that's the reason they're working for someone else for now. So this is the only reason. Like I really don't think this is a great business to be in for me. Now, however, you need to evaluate for yourself and see if you can do it legally, and only then you should get into this. But so this is the third reason why restaurant business is not such a great business. Now, returns. So it's interesting how people think about the returns. Guess the returns on a restaurant. I told you it's labor intensive. I told you all these things, right? But do you know what the returns are? See, it's interesting, at least $10,000 to $12,000 per head. If your wife is also working with you, $20,000 to $22,000. $20,000 to $22,000 per month is the money you would make. See, even by working 16 hours a day in an Uber or somewhere else on a gas station, you can make maybe $10, $15, $12 an hour. For $16 an hour is approximately 200. At the rate of 16 hours an hour, it's about $200 an hour. Now let's say you're legal, let's say you're having green card or citizen, you're obviously your ability to earn is more. You can make $25 an hour. So by working 16 hours a day, you can anyway make about about $300 or so. So I don't know why would anybody at $300, and that would mean like $10,000 in a month. Then why would any restaurant worker make anything less than that? And restaurant owner will make anything less than that. It's kind of interesting how people think. So let me tell you where I'm coming from. One of my friends who's an IT guy, his salary was like $90,000, and his wife's salary was about maybe $80,000. When they were sitting in a restaurant, then I asked them, how much. They asked me actually, how much money this restaurant owner could be making, and I said, you make a guess. So they said minimum $3,000 a month, and I was shocked. I said, you could make $3,000 by running a Uber. There is really nothing. Why would you know? You can easily make $6,000-7,000 by becoming an Uber driver. So why would you not just do that? Why would you have all these rents and all those things, and then and have so much staff and so much headache and then so much coordination, and then just make $3,000? Doesn't make sense how people think. No, guys, the returns are around $10,000 to $12,000 per head. If you're alone, then 10 to 12. If your wife is also with you, maybe $22,000. That is the minimum. If it is making anything less than 10,000, you might as well close the restaurant. There's no need to, because you could easily work for 16 hours a day and then for $25 an hour and make that kind of much more money than that, right? So 16 to 25 is basically $400. So that's a lot of money. And other thing is, there is another situation. Like one of my friend thought, like I asked him, like he was like, what is the what is the revenue to profit ratio? So many of the people wrongly believe that it's 3%. Because they look at this corporate data and then they see that the return on the restaurants is 3%. Actually, that's not true. That is true for maybe corporate businesses, 4%, 5% business profits. But for traditional business restaurant, Indian ethnic restaurants, the returns are around 30-35%. So if there is $1 million gross revenue, then the income is around $300,000 to $350,000 gross profit. So these are all kind of interesting, how many people do not know all these things. But anyway, these are the returns on a typical restaurant. You may want to go for a restaurant. There's not a problem. As you know, it's a labor-intensive work. A lot of labor is involved. You have to sacrifice your. This is another point. Rather a corollary of the labor-intensive work point, that you have to sacrifice your family life a lot. The weekends are the most busy ones typically, and you will be seen you'll be seen basically spending time without your kids, or you may start taking your kids to to your restaurant, and similarly, from Monday to Friday in the evenings, you may be busy in your restaurant because there are dinner customers will be coming, and you may not be having time for your kids. Other than that, this is a pretty nice business. As I said, the returns are not so bad if you're in IT and you want to get into restaurant business. But remember, in IT itself, by the time your restaurant will be doing quite well, within 4 or 5 years, you would be making that kind of money in your job itself. Typically in IT, you would make like $120,000 a year at the age of maybe 30, 31, and around 35 you'll be making 130, 140, 150. If your wife is also similar age, you will be making almost double, like maybe $300,000. So if you're making $300,000, you don't need to really need to open a restaurant. See, so this is not an Indian style business. In India there is a restaurant, and like it's a big thing, and you're having Bikaner wala, or maybe you have this Gulab sweets, and this is a big restaurant. This is a big venture in India. Here it's not a big deal. Anybody can open this by just saving money for 1 year or so. They can easily open a restaurant. Another thing is, when you buy an existing restaurant, always remember that restaurants are not evaluated at 5 times the earning. So you look at I'll tell you all these points. So please, look at all the entire, videos, and that's only will you understand, what I want to say. But basically, you don't look at 5 times the earnings or 5 times the same. Guess the formula for a restaurant when you're buying a restaurant. The price of the utensils and the machinery. That's it. So $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for a restaurant, maybe $100,000. If it's an already established restaurant, you look at the money that you would be spending in establishing the restaurant, and the money that is the money that you'll be established in a restaurant, and then see, and all that money is basically just the price of the restaurant. That's just a little bit utensils, machinery, and it's 90,000, $100,000 venture. But now you're buying a already running restaurant which is having a used machinery, which is having used utensils, so it will be basically $40,000-$50,000. Sometimes restaurants have a wine license. You need to be aware of that. If they're having a wine license, that's very costly in some counties and in some states. So you need to be aware of that license. And if they have it, then that could be quite costly. Sometimes the restaurant license itself could be quite costly, and you should be aware of that, and you should be factoring that in. Let's say it's 20,000, then obviously the price should be 50,000 plus 20,000. Right, but it's in that ballpark. It's not like if there's a profit of $350,000, then the price should be 1.5 million or something. Don't fall into that trap. Many IT people fall into that trap. All right, thank you guys.